My name is Daniel Carter, and if you asked anyone in my hometown of Maplewood who I was, they'd probably shrug and say, "Oh, Danny? He's just Danny." That's the kind of place Maplewood is, small enough that everyone knows your face, but not always your story. It sits in the middle of Ohio farmland, tucked between rolling fields of corn and the quiet hum of the interstate that barely brushes past US. I'd lived here all my life. 24 years spent under the same wide skies, walking the same cracked sidewalks, working in the same auto shop that my dad once did. There's comfort in it, sure. Routine. But sometimes I'd stand outside at night, leaning against my old Chevy, staring at the horizon and wondering if life had meant for me to go anywhere else. And then she showed up, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Life in Maplewood had a rhythm. Mornings at the diner, afternoons fixing cars, evenings at the bar on Main Street. My best friend, Tyler, used to joke that we were living in some country song that never ends. He wasn't wrong. Most folks stayed here forever. Some left, but they always found their way back, carrying stories of big cities like ghosts that didn't quite belong to them. I thought I'd be one of those people. Rooted, settled, ordinary. Until the summer that changed everything. IT started with the sound of guitar. IT was a Friday evening in late June, hot enough that the air felt heavy, sticky with the scent of fried food drifting from the diner down the street. Tyler and I had just finished a long day at the shop. We'd cleaned up, cracked open a couple of beers in the bed of his truck, and were debating whether to head into town when I heard it. Soft chords, the kind you only play when you're lost in thought. I followed the sound like a moth. Across the street, sitting on the steps of the old library that had been closed for years, was a girl. She had her knees pulled up, guitar balanced against her, long brown hair falling across her face as she strummed. She wasn't just playing. She was pouring herself into it, her voice barely louder than a whisper but strong enough to pull me in. "Who's that?" I asked. Tyler shrugged. "No idea. Haven't seen her before." That was rare. In Maplewood, new people didn't just appear. Outsiders stuck out like neon signs that I couldn't look away. She wore cut-off jeans and a faded flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up. There was something about the way she sang, like she wasn't performing for anyone but herself, yet somehow it felt like the whole town should stop and listen. "Danny?" Tyler waved a hand in front of me. "You're staring." "Yeah," I muttered. "I know." Later that night, I found myself walking past the library again. The girl was packing up her guitar, slipping it into a worn black case covered in stickers. I don't know what possessed me, but I called out, "You play good." She looked up, startled. Her eyes caught the streetlight, green, sharp, but tired in a way that made me want to ask 100 questions. "Thanks," she said, cautious. "I'm Danny." I offered. She hesitated, then said, "Emma, new in town." Something like that. She tightened the strap on her guitar case. There was a pause, the kind that usually means the other person's about to walk away. But I didn't want her to. "You should come by the Rusty Nail sometime," I said quickly. "It's the bar down on Main. Live music on Saturdays." People would actually listen. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "Maybe." And just like that, she walked away, disappearing into the quiet streets of Maplewood, as if she'd always belonged there, and yet didn't at all. I didn't know then that Emma Collins was about to turn my world inside out. The Rusty Nail wasn't much to look at. Just a squat brick building with a faded neon sign that flickered more often than it glowed. But it was the closest thing Maplewood had to a nightlife scene. On weekends, you'd find half the town packed inside, sipping cheap beer, shooting pool, or listening to whoever had the guts to climb onto the makeshift stage in the corner. Saturday rolled around, and Tyler dragged me there like usual. The air smelled like cigarettes and fried pickles. The jukebox hummed somewhere in the back, and the floorboards creaked with every step. I wasn't thinking about him at first. But then, halfway through my second beer, I saw her. She was standing near the back, guitar case at her feet, looking like she wasn't sure if she belonged. Her hair was tied up messily, and she wore a denim jacket with sleeves rolled. Not flashy, not trying to impress, just herself. "Danny," Tyler nudged me, smirking. "Library girl." "Shut up," I muttered, but my chest tightened before I could talk myself out of it. Emma was walking toward the stage. She moved like someone forcing herself to be brave, every step determined. When she set up and strummed her first chord, the room actually quieted, a rare thing in the rusty nail. Her voice wasn't polished. It was raw, full of cracks and edges, but that made it better. It made it real. She sang about leaving places, about driving down endless highways with no map, about chasing something she couldn't name that I didn't know if anyone else in the bar really heard it. But I did, and it felt like she was telling my story, too. When she finished, the applause was scattered but genuine. Emma gave a small nod, almost embarrassed, and stepped down. I caught her by the bar, nursing a soda. "You killed it," I said. Her eyes flicked up at me. I don't think they cared much. I cared. Something softened in her expression, just for a second. Then she looked away, sipping her drink. "It's not really about them, anyway. It's just something I do. You any good at pool?" I asked, nodding toward the table where Tyler was waiting, her lips curved. "Terrible. Perfect. So am I." That night, we played the worst game of pool in Maplewood history. We missed easy shots, laughed too much, and by the end of it, I felt like I'd known her longer than a couple of days. But there were walls around her, high ones. Every time I asked something real, she'd dodge, turn the question back on me, or just smile like she was hiding a whole world I wasn't allowed into yet I didn't mind. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to rush anything. Over the next few weeks, Emma became a part of my routine. She'd sit on the library steps some evenings, strumming while I closed up the shop. Sometimes we'd talk for hours, about music, about books, about how quiet Maplewood was compared to the places she'd been. "Why here?" I asked once. She shrugged. "Why anywhere?" It wasn't an answer, but I let it go. Maplewood didn't let much slide, though. People noticed her. The diner waitress, Mrs. Harlow, asked me, "Who's that pretty girl I saw you with?" My mom raised her eyebrows when I mentioned her at dinner. Even old Mr. Jenkins, who lived next door and barely said a word, asked if Emma was staying long. Small towns thrive on curiosity and mystery. Emma was both. Tyler teased me about it constantly. "You're gone, man," he said one night as we sat on his porch drinking beers. "I'm not." I argued. He laughed. "You are. I've seen that look. You're into her, and she's into you. It's just a matter of time." I didn't answer. Because he was right. One late July evening, I found Emma sitting on the hood of her old beat-up car, parked by the river on the edge of town. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the air buzzing with crickets. "Hey," I said, climbing up beside her. She handed me half of her milkshake without a word. "Vanilla." My favorite. We sat in silence for a while, watching the water move slow and lazy. Then she said, "Do you ever feel stuck here?" "All the time," I admitted. "But I don't know what I'd do anywhere else." She nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I don't think I've ever stayed in one place long enough to get stuck. But I'm tired of running too." I looked at her then, really looked, and something clicked. She wasn't just a girl passing through. She was searching for something, maybe the same thing I'd been searching for without knowing it. Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and kissed her. Tea wasn't dramatic, wasn't perfect. Just soft, tentative, like testing the waters. But the way she kissed me back, gentle, then sure, told me I wasn't alone in what I felt. When we pulled apart, she smiled faintly. "You taste like vanilla." I laughed, heart pounding. That's not the worst thing to hear. For the first time in my life, Maplewood didn't feel small. It felt like the center of the universe. After that kiss, everything changed, though not in the loud, fireworks kind of way. It was quieter than that, steadier, like a river shifting its course so slowly you don't notice until the water runs somewhere new. Emma and I started spending almost every evening together. Sometimes we'd sit on the library steps, sometimes on the hood of her car by the river, sometimes on my porch with my mom watching us from the kitchen window, pretending she wasn't, that we didn't talk about what we were. Neither of us labeled it. But the way her hand would slip into mine, the way her laughter softened the rough edges of my day, it was enough that I learned little pieces of her life in fragments. She told me she grew up moving a lot. Her mom was restless, she said, like the kind of person who couldn't stay in one place without suffocating. They'd lived in half a dozen states before Emma was 18. Somewhere in there, her mom had left for good, and Emma was left to figure things out on her own. She spoke about it lightly, as if it was just another fact. But I could see the weight behind her eyes. "You ever want to leave again?" I asked once. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But lately less and less." That answer settled into my chest and made something bloom there. Of course, Tyler noticed. He always did. You're in deep, man, he said one night while we were closing the shop. Yeah, I admitted, surprising even myself. I wasn't usually quick to admit feelings, even to him. That he leaned against the workbench, wiping grease off his hands. I like her. I do. But there's something, I don't know, off. Like she's holding something back. She just doesn't open up easy, I said defensively. Maybe, or maybe she's planning on taking off like people always do. I just don't want to see you wrecked, Danny. I wanted to argue, but the truth was I'd thought the same thing. Emma felt temporary sometimes, like a song you love but know will end. Still, I couldn't stay away. Maplewood took the 4th of July seriously. The whole town gathered in the park. Picnic tables, barbecue grills, kids running with sparklers, the smell of sunscreen and smoke in the air. That I wasn't sure if Emma would come. Crowds weren't really her thing. But halfway through the afternoon, I spotted her walking across the grass in a sundress, carrying her guitar. Didn't think you'd show, I said when she found me. She shrugged. Figured I'd give small-town America a try. She ended up playing a couple of songs for the crowd. Nothing fancy, just sitting on a blanket while people gathered around. Her voice carried over the chatter and laughter, and for a moment, the whole park seemed to pause. After the fireworks that night, we lay on the grass side by side. You know, she whispered, this is the first time in years I've felt steady. I turned to look at her. That's a good thing, right? Her eyes searched mine in the dark. Yeah, I think it is. I kissed her again, fireworks still echoing faintly in the distance. And in that moment, I wanted nothing more than for her to stay. But life doesn't stay perfect for long. One evening in late July, Emma didn't show up. Not at the library, not at the river, not even a text. Hours passed, and my chest grew tighter. I drove around town, half angry, half worried. I finally found her sitting behind the diner, knees pulled to her chest, guitar beside her. Emma, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What's going on? She looked up, eyes rimmed red. I don't belong here, Danny. Yes, you do, I said instantly. With me, you do. She shook her head. You don't understand. Everywhere I go, I mess things up. I stay too long, people start to expect things, and then I run. It's what I do. It's who I am. I crouched down in front of her, heart pounding. You don't have to run this time. Her eyes filled with tears. What if I hurt you? You already hurt me when you disappear like this, I whispered. She pressed her lips together, then reached for my hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I don't know if I can promise forever, she said softly. I'm not asking for forever, I told her. I'm asking for tonight, and tomorrow, and as many days as you'll give me. She leaned against me, trembling, and I held her until the night grew too cold. After that night, things shifted. She still laughed, still played her songs, still kissed me like I was something worth staying for. But I saw the fear behind her eyes more clearly now, and I started to realize something. Falling in love with Emma was like holding onto a flame. Warm and bright, yes, but always with the risk that it might burn out or slip through my fingers that I didn't care. I want to hold on anyway. August in Maplewood has a way of pressing down on you. The air gets thick, heavy with heat and the smell of cut grass. Cicadas scream from the trees, and every step feels slower, stickier. That summer, though, I didn't mind the wait. I was too busy falling deeper into Emma that we slipped into a rhythm. She'd wander into the shop around lunchtime with an iced tea, plop down on the counter, and play quiet chords while I worked. Customers started asking about her, who she was, if she was my girlfriend. I never knew quite how to answer, but she didn't seem to mind. Tea night, we'd drive down back roads with the windows rolled all the way down, her hair whipping in the wind while she sang along to whatever was on the radio. Sometimes we ended up by the river, sometimes at the fairgrounds where the Ferris wheel sat rusting, sometimes just parked on some dirt road, talking until the stars faded. That IT felt endless. And yet, I could feel time slipping through my fingers. My mom liked Emma. That mattered more to me than I expected. One Sunday evening, Emma stayed for dinner. Mom made meatloaf, her specialty, and kept sneaking glances at Emma like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. You play beautifully, Mom said after dessert. I could hear you from the porch the other night. Emma ducked her head. Thanks. You remind me of myself when I was your age, Mom added. Only difference is, I was too afraid to leave this town. You seem braver than that. Emma's fork froze halfway to her mouth. She set it down carefully, forcing a smile. Not sure if it's bravery or just running away. I reached under the table, squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Later, when we were alone, she said quietly, "Your mom's right. I've spent my whole life running. It's not something to admire." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that surviving the way she had took strength. But she didn't look like she wanted comfort. She looked like she wanted forgiveness for something she hadn't confessed yet. Toward the middle of the month, Tyler threw a birthday party out at Miller's Lake. Bonfire, beer coolers, half the town showing up with guitars and lawn chairs. Emma was nervous about going. "Too many eyes," she said as we pulled up. "Just stick with me," I told her. She played a couple of songs by the fire, and people loved her. Even Tyler, who never gave compliments easily, said, "Damn, Danny, she's got something." For a while, it felt perfect, the firelight, the sound of crickets, her voice mingling with the night. But later, when most people had drifted off or passed out, I found her sitting alone at the edge of the dock, staring at the black water. "You okay?" I asked. Sitting beside her, she hugged her knees. "This is the kind of night I'll remember." Which scares me, because it means I'll want to stay. And I'm not good at staying. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," I said. She looked at me, eyes shining with something between longing and fear. "But you do. You're building a life here. I don't want to be the person who ruins that." I grabbed her hand. "Emma, you're not ruining anything. You're making it better." For a moment, it seemed to reach her. She kissed me, harder than usual, desperate. But when it ended, she pulled back like she'd just stolen something that didn't belong to her. A week later, a summer storm rolled through. The kind that shakes windows and floods streets in minutes. I was closing up the shop when Emma burst through the door, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her face. "Car broke down," she gasped. "On the highway." I grabbed the keys, and we drove out in the rain, wipers barely keeping up. Her car sat on the shoulder, steam rising from under the hood. "Looks like the radiator," I said after a quick look. "You've been driving it too hard." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Story of my life. Back at the shop, I handed her a towel, tried to warm her with coffee. She sat on the workbench, staring at her dripping shoes. Finally, she said, "I was supposed to leave next week." The words hit me harder than the storm outside. "What?" "I wasn't planning to stay this long," she admitted. "But then in this place," she trailed off, voice breaking that I stepped closer, heart pounding. "Then don't go." Tears filled her eyes. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" She opened her mouth, then shut it. Shook her head. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I pleaded. But she only whispered, "I can't." The rain hammered the roof above us. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Emma was a mystery I might never solve. That night, after I drove her home, I sat awake in my room, staring at the ceiling. I thought about her laugh, her music, the way she looked at me like I was both the safest place she'd ever known and the biggest risk she could take. I thought about Tyler's warning, my mom's words, the way Emma's eyes always seemed to be looking somewhere else, as if she already saw the day she'd leave. And I wondered, how do you love someone who doesn't believe they deserve to stay? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. After the storm, nothing looked different on the surface. The town dried up, the sun came back, and life in Maplewood moved at its slow pace again. But between Emma and me, there was a shift. Small, almost invisible, like a crack in a windshield that grows with every bump in the road. She still came by the shop, still played guitar by the river, still laughed at Tyler's stupid jokes. But I could see her drifting sometimes, her eyes going distant, her smile not quite holding that I told myself not to push. If she wanted to tell me what was holding her back, she would. But patience is harder than it sounds when your heart feels like it's living on borrowed time. One evening, I stopped by the diner to grab us burgers. Emma was sitting in our usual booth, fiddling with her phone. She didn't notice me at first. The screen lit up with a name, MOM. She stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then she shoved the phone face down on the table, jaw tight. When she saw me, She forced a smile. Hey, I slid into the booth, my chest heavy. You're not going to answer? It's complicated, she muttered. Emma, please don't. She cut me off, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. The whole diner seemed to pause, the clatter of silverware and low chatter fading under the weight of her tone. Then, softer, she added, not tonight. Just not tonight. I nodded, swallowing the 100 questions burning in my throat. That was the first time I realized love isn't just about sharing what you know. It's also about holding space for the things someone isn't ready to say out of course. Tyler didn't see it that way. She's hiding something big, he told me a few nights later while we worked on a busted Chevy. I don't get how you can just let that slide. Because it's her life? I shot back. He dropped his wrench with a clang. And what about you? What if she disappears tomorrow? You're just supposed to be okay with it. I glared at him, grease smudged across my arm. I'd rather risk it than push her away. He shook his head. You're gonna get hurt, Danny. Bad. I didn't answer, but the truth was, I already was. One night in late August, Emma showed up on my porch with her guitar. Play me something, I said. She hesitated, then nodded. She played a song I hadn't heard before. The melody was slow, aching. The lyrics spoke of leaving, of suitcases always half-packed, of people she loved but couldn't hold on to. When she finished, silence settled around us, broken only by the chirp of crickets. Is that about you? I asked softly. She stared at the strings. It's about everyone I've ever left behind. Am I going to be one of them? Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and pained. She didn't answer. That silence told me more than words could. The next day, Emma asked me to drive her car into town so I could order the parts it needed. While waiting at a red light, I opened the glove box to grab her registration. A folded envelope slid out. On the front, in neat handwriting, was my name. I froze. My chest tightened as I stared at it. I didn't open it. I couldn't. It felt wrong, like breaking into a secret not meant for me yet. I shoved it back, hands shaking, and slammed the glove box shut. But all day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why write me a letter unless she was planning to leave? That evening, I drove her car back to her place. She was sitting on the porch, sketching in a notebook. Everything okay? She asked when she saw my face. Yeah. I lied. We sat in silence for a while. The air was thick with things unsaid. Finally, I blurted out, promise me something. She looked up, startled. What? Promise me you won't disappear without saying goodbye. Her expression cracked, just for a second, just enough for me to see the truth she was trying to hide. I'll try, she whispered. Not try. I pressed. Promise. She bit her lip, then nodded slowly. Okay, I promise. But the way she said it didn't sound like a promise. It sounded like a hope she already knew she couldn't keep. The Maplewood Summer Carnival rolled into town at the end of August. Bright lights, the smell of popcorn and fried dough, kids running wild. Emma and I walked hand in hand past the booths. She laughed when I failed miserably at the ring toss, teased me for screaming on the Ferris wheel, and kissed me under strings of colored lights. For a few hours, it felt like we were just two people in love, without shadows hanging over us. But later, as we sat on the hood of her car eating cotton candy, she grew quiet. What if this is all I can give you? She asked suddenly. I frowned. What do you mean? Moments. Nights like this. But not forever. I shook my head fiercely. That's not true. She gave me a sad smile, her eyes shimmering under the carnival lights. Danny, sometimes love isn't enough to fix everything. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she could stay, that we could build something here. But the words stuck in my throat, drowned by the fear that maybe she was right. The night after the carnival, Emma didn't show up. Not at the library, not at the diner, not by the river that I drove to her place. Her car was gone. The porch light was off. The house felt hollow. And in that moment, my worst fear tightened around me like a vice. She'd promised me she wouldn't disappear. But maybe promises don't mean much to someone who spent her whole life running. The night Emma didn't show, I barely slept. Every time a car passed my window, I bolted upright, hoping it was hers. By dawn, my chest ached from the weight of it all that I drove through town, scanning every corner, every side street. The diner, the library steps, the riverbank. Empty. Her car wasn't in her house either. Maplewood had never felt so big and so small at the same time. Big, because she was nowhere in sight. Small, because there weren't that many places she could be. E.B. Why the third day? The question started up Mrs. Harlow at the diner asked, "Haven't seen your girl lately. She go visiting family." Tyler cornered me at the shop. "Danny, it's been 3 days. You have to face it. She's gone." But I couldn't. I refused. On the fourth day, I cracked. I drove back to her place, heart pounding, hands trembling. The house looked untouched, blinds drawn, mailbox overflowing with junk flyers. I sat in her car, staring at the glove box. Finally, I opened it. The letter was still there, folded neatly with my name written on the front. My throat burned as I tore it open. "Danny, I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth sooner, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried, you looked at me like I was something good, and I couldn't stand to ruin that I don't stay. It's not just a choice, it's who I've always been. My mom taught me how to run before I ever learned how to belong. And I'm scared because with you, I want to stay. But wanting isn't enough. Please don't hate me. Please remember me like the girl who played guitar on the library steps, not the one who left without goodbye." Emma, by the time I finished, the ink had blurred from the tears I didn't remember shedding. That I pressed the paper to my chest, but it didn't stop the hollow ache spreading through me. She was gone. I walked through the next week like a ghost. Fixed cars with my hands on autopilot. Nodded through conversations I didn't hear. Sat on my porch at night waiting for headlights that never came. Tyler tried to pull me out of it. Took me fishing, dragged me to the bar, even set me up with some girl who worked at the pharmacy. But it all felt empty. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," he said one night. She left, man. "It sucks, but it's done." I shook my head. "It doesn't feel done. Because you won't let it," he snapped. "You're holding on to someone who never planned to hold on to you." His words stung. Because maybe they were true. 2 weeks later, just as I was starting to accept the silence, my phone buzzed with an unknown number that I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. "Danny?" My heart stopped. "Emma." Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. Where are you?" I demanded. She hesitated. "A couple hours away. I thought leaving would fix things, but it didn't. Nothing feels right without you." The line went quiet except for her breathing. "Then come back," I whispered. "I can't." "Why not?" Her silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she said, "Because I didn't leave for me. I left because he found me." My stomach dropped. "Who?" She whispered. "My mom's boyfriend. The one we ran from years ago. He's been calling, showing up. And I can't let him hurt anyone I care about. Not again." The line went dead before I could respond. For hours, I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, her words echoing in my head. She hadn't left because she didn't care. She'd left because she was scared. Because someone from her past had clawed his way back into her present. And now she was out there, alone, carrying it all by herself. Every instinct in me screamed to go find her. To get in my truck, drive until I tracked her down, and bring her home. But I didn't even know where home was for her anymore. And worse, I didn't know if she'd let me die. I spent the night pacing the length of my room, her words on repeat in my head. He found me. Every time I tried to sleep, I saw her face, tired, scared, brave. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. Maplewood had always been my anchor, the place I thought I'd never leave. But Emma had blown through my life like a storm, and I couldn't just sit here waiting for scraps of her voice over the phone. I threw some clothes in a duffel bag, grabbed the folded letter from my nightstand, and walked out the door. Mom caught me on the porch. "Where are you going?" she asked, worry etched in her features. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I have to find her." She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Be careful, Danny." Her voice was steady, but I could see her eyes glisten as I climbed into my truck. I stopped by the shop to leave the keys. Tyler was already there, wiping down a workbench. When I told him, he slammed the rag onto the counter. "Are you kidding me? You're going to chase after a girl who already ran from you once." "She didn't run from me," I snapped. "She was scared." "Scared? Or making excuses?" His jaw tightened. "Look, I care about you, Danny. You're my brother. But you're throwing your whole life away for someone who might not even want saving." "I have to try," I said simply. But he stared at me, anger mixing with something softer. "Then promise me one thing. If you find her and she tells you to walk away, you will. I couldn't promise that. So I just said, I'll call you. The highway stretched out in front of me, endless and gray. I didn't have a map, just a number she called from. I dialed it again and again, but it always went to voicemail. With every passing mile, doubt crept in. What if she didn't want me to find her? What if I showed up and made everything worse? But then I'd picture her sitting alone somewhere, guitar in her lap, fear in her eyes. And I pressed the gas a little harder, BY evening. I traced the number to a cheap roadside motel 2 towns over. The clerk at the desk barely looked up when I asked about her. Room 12. He grunted. My heart pounded as I walked down the narrow hallway. I raised my hand to knock, then froze. What if she slammed the door in my face? What if Tyler was right, and I was just another weight she didn't need? But before I could talk myself out of it, the door opened. Emma stood there, hair messy, eyes swollen like she'd been crying for days. For a moment, she just stared at me in shock. Danny, she whispered. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She pulled me inside quickly, shutting the door like she was afraid someone had followed. What are you doing here? She asked, voice trembling. I came to find you. Her eyes filled with tears. You shouldn't have. It's not safe. Safe doesn't matter, I said. You matter. For a long moment, she just looked at me, like she was trying to decide whether to believe me. Then she sank onto the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. He's been calling nonstop, she said finally, showing up at places I used to live. My mom went back to him, Danny. She always does. And now he's trying to drag me back too. Her voice cracked. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I knelt in front of her, gently pulling her hands away from her face. Then you won't. Not as long as I'm here. For the first time in days, she let herself fall into my arms. And I held her, heart breaking and mending all at once that we stayed holed up in that motel room for 2 days. Eating takeout, watching the rain streak the window, talking in fragments. She told me more about her past, cities she barely remembered, nights she slept in cars, the way music was the only thing that kept her sane. I don't even know what home is, she admitted once. Maybe that's why I keep leaving. Then we'll build one, I said. Right here, or in Maplewood, or wherever you want. We'll figure out together. She looked at me like she wanted to believe. And for the first time since she left, I felt like maybe she could. But peace never lasts long. On the 3rd night, just as Emma was strumming her guitar softly, a heavy knock rattled the door. Her face went pale. Emma, a man's voice called. Rough. Familiar to her. Not to me. Open the door. We need to talk. She shook her head, panic flooding her features. My chest tightened as I stood, moving between her and the door. The knock came again, harder this time. Emma, the voice growled. I know you're in there. She grabbed my hand, squeezing so tight it hurt, and in that moment I knew the quiet life I'd always known in Maplewood was gone. Whatever came next, it was bigger, darker, and far more dangerous. But I also knew one thing for certain. I wasn't letting her face it alone.